What are the next steps after you write your offer and you get it accepted when purchasing a home? So last video, we talked all about the offer, the three mandatory terms, the three additional terms, and kind of our reasoning behind them. It was one of the longer videos in the series, and for good reason. The offer is probably the most important part of your process as a buyer from start to finish. It's going to make or break basically everything. But let's start talking about sort of the end of this process as we continue down this road of getting under contract. Now, that's kind of the terminology. You're getting under contract. And what that means is we've made an offer, we presented it to the listing agent, they've presented it to the seller. The seller has decided to select our offer, whether it be a multiple bid situation, whether we were the only offer. There's different kind of pathways you take for each, not really overly important for the purpose of a video, but let's talk about what happens when they say, you know what? Yes, we are going to accept your buyer's offer and we are going to ready to get to contract. So here's kind of the timeline of things that happen. First, we get that acknowledgement generally through an email. The listing agent will then begin preparing a contract. Now, the contract is a state standard sales agreement. We use basically the same contract anywhere in the state of New Jersey. And we're not rewriting it every time. We, as the realtors, we're just filling in the blanks. We're not writing a whole contract from scratch. It's not different from deal to deal. So what I like to do with all of my buyers when we meet for the very first time in what's called a buyer strategy session, where we go over basically the stuff we go over in these 10-part videos, I like to give you a blank agreement, just a blank contract. And this way you have time now to read it. It's a 13-page legal document with a lot of different sections and confusing language in there that if you've never read something like this before, it's going to be a lot of new stuff. And what I hate to see is from the time you write your offer, you get your offer accepted, that listing agent and that seller, they want that signed contract back within like 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours at most. You don't have time to just sit there and say, okay, great, it's Tuesday now, and you sent me the contract, I'll get it back to you by Friday. No, you've lost that house. That house is gone. That seller and listing agent saying, hey, thanks, but we have other offers. If you're not willing to sign this and move forward, we can't risk losing other buyers. We're going to go to those other buyers and we're going to get them to sign a contract instead. And it's sort of a race to who signs the contract first at that point. With that being said, we get the contract, we sign it as the buyer side first. Then we send it back and then the seller signs it as their side. Now, this next part's important. As soon as the seller and the listing agent email us back a fully signed or fully executed real estate contract, that is the very first checkpoint that a lot of the timing of the rest of the transaction is based on. Real estate contracts are all about timing. You have so many days to do this. Then once that's done, you have so many days to do this. Then once that's done, you have so many days to respond. Once that's done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's talk about the first two big items that happen as soon as you get under contract. Now, for the purpose of this, we're going to just make up kind of a scenario, and we'll use that to illustrate kind of the points of attorney review. And that's the first thing, attorney review. As soon as that contract has been given back to us, the next business day begins a 3 business day period called attorney review. Okay, so let's assume that we are getting a contract back and it's a Tuesday. And I'll do a different scenario if it was later in the week, but let's run with this. If we get that fully signed contract back on Tuesday, let's say at noon, then Wednesday would begin attorney review. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and by the end of the day on Friday, we would be out of attorney review. Now you may say, what is attorney review? Attorney review is a 3-day period in which both the buyer and the seller have the right, but not the obligation, to have an attorney read and review the contract and any supporting addendum and make proposed changes. Now, both sides have to agree on any of those changes. You can't just have the seller's attorney change all the language of the contract and we have to just agree to it. No, both sides have to agree to any of those changes. Most of the time, the attorneys are just going in there to maybe clean up some of the language. Because again, as realtors, we get that we just want to have this one term included, but the attorney may look at it and say, I totally get what you guys are trying to do here. However, there's some holes in just the way that this is written. So we're going to propose to rewrite that in a more legally binding, more transparent, more easy to follow method. A lot of times the attorneys are there just to sort of help it out. Now, I have seen attorneys kill deals during attorney review. They say, my client wrote an offer that they didn't really understand what they were getting into, and we are not comfortable moving forward at these terms. We are now going to move forward at these other terms. Now, a seller may say, Okay, that's a pretty small difference in what you originally were, and what it's no big material difference to us. Fine, that's fine. We'll continue forward. But I have seen it where the buyer's attorney comes in and they're like, "No, we're not accepting any of this. This is completely not what you offered, and we would have taken one of the other three offers that were better than what you're offering. So no, we don't agree to that." And if that happens, then the deal's dead. Now let's talk about attorney review in a more practical sense, and we're going to take this from the side of the buyer and the seller. Before I do that, let me just explain one example real quick about attorney review, because I said I was going to say two examples. So let's assume that you have that attorney review Tuesday, we get them back Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is that period. But what if you got the contract back on Thursday afternoon? It's like, okay, well, we got it back on Thursday, so that means 3 business days. So Friday, Monday, Tuesday. So you could actually have your attorney review run all the way. If you got contracts back on a Thursday, your attorney review would run Tuesday of the next week. And I say that leading into this next part, which is let's talk about how we use attorney review as a buyer and as a seller. Here's the concern you have as a buyer. During that period, both the buyer and seller can cancel the contract without any reason given. Now, it has to be from an attorney. You have to get like $150 to $200, what's called a kill letter. And it's an attorney letterhead. They write it and they say, this contract is null and void. You could stub your toe. You don't have to give any reason why. There's no language in the contract. You just say, during attorney review, I've had an attorney review the contract and it is null and void. That can just happen. So if you're a buyer and you just submitted an offer on a house and you just got the bid and they accepted your offer and we got all the signed contracts back and we're on the second day of attorney review, if that seller gets a better offer, they can cancel our deal. If we may have gone through a highest and best, there may have been 5 other offers and we got it and we went up and we got this house and it's all good terms. And then Monday of next week, the seller says, hey, I got an offer that was $10,000 higher than your offer. Can you match it? And you're going to be like, well, no, we're maxed out. We just beat the other 5 off. This was our terms. We can't go any higher. And the seller can say, hey, well, I understand that, but I'm going to kill this deal during attorney review and I'm going to take this other offer. So as a buyer, I tell people, don't stop searching until we're out of attorney review. Really, because attorney review is we've signed contracts, but we're not really locked into anything because we have 3 business days where anybody could just change their mind and kill this deal. So as a seller, we also have that right. Now, as a seller, you may say, that's great. I have a buyer who came in, they put an offer on our house and I got a better one. Great. I'd love to have that opportunity to kick that buyer out and take a higher offer if it's better for me. And as a seller, you should. But what a buyer can also do is maybe you're under contract and that was the only buyer that offered on your house. Maybe your house sat for a couple months and you got a buyer that you finally got to get under contract on your home. The opposite can happen. 2 days into attorney review, that buyer can reach out and say, hey, you know what? We had actually submitted 2 offers. We offered on this other house. That was really our first choice. You just happened to get back to us quicker. And we were scared to not get a house, so we did sign a contract with you. However, we just found out that other house, they want to take our offer. So unfortunately, seller, as a buyer, we're going to kill this transaction during attorney review and we're going to go take that other offer and we're going to move forward with that other house. So that's crushing. So there's good and bad from a practical standpoint of using attorney review sort of to your leverage. And here's the last kind of example of attorney review as a benefit, especially in a market like this. And then I'm going to jump to the home inspection and just some of the things with that. Here's how we use it in a way in a fast market. So remember, you're not locked into anything till the end of attorney review. But we see a lot of listings that are 3 days on market, already highest and best. There's not enough time. And you may say, Connor, I can't even it's a Tuesday. The house was listed. They're already calling for highest and best Thursday night. I can't even get in to see that house until Saturday. You're like, do I just miss on this house? Not necessarily. So since the start of COVID, I've done over 300 virtual tours. And I put them up on YouTube, but never public. That would be wildly illegal. So I would never do that. The only people that ever see these virtual tours are the specific client that the property was made for. So what I do sometimes is say, well, you know what? I know you can't get there till Saturday, but I can get there today. So I'll go and I got a really nice gimbal, couple $100 gimbal that shows a really nice video. And I'll do a 15, 20-minute walkthrough recording everything I can see about that entire house. And I'll send it to you. And this way you can watch it, you can read it, you can watch it back a couple of times, you and your significant other. If you're buying with somebody else, you can watch it together. And then you say, oh my gosh, we love this house. We have to offer on it. But again, I can't see it till Saturday. So what we'll do is let's prep a whole offer. Let's prep and send an offer Wednesday night. And we'll get it in by the highest and best on Thursday. Okay, so let's play this out. If you win the bid, still haven't seen the house yet, we can sign contracts, get them all fully executed before the end of the week without you ever seeing the place and without you ever being locked into having to buy it. Because I'll take you on Saturday and you may walk into the house and you may say, this is not what I thought at all. That very rarely happens. But you may walk into it and be like, I don't like the smell. I don't like the area. I don't like something about this I thought showed a little bit differently on the video, but actually now that I'm here, I really don't like it. Man, I'm having really second thoughts about this house now. We just kill it during attorney review. I'll just say, hey, you know what? Buyer changed their mind. Kill letter, release. No funds have passed. The only money you'll have spent is paying the attorney to provide this kill letter for you. Not just for them to write it and for them to put their name on it and things like that. And they do have to actually review the contract to cancel it. So we use attorney review in a lot of different ways. It's in almost no other state. I'm also licensed in Pennsylvania. That is not the process for PA. PA, you write an offer as a contract. As soon as they sign it, you're under contract and you're starting your inspection period. Period. End of story. There is no second guessing. But in PA, you can only write one offer at a time because as soon as they sign it, it's binding. So you physically cannot have more than one contract circulating at any one point. In New Jersey, offers are not binding. We can submit multiple offers at once. And we do. Sometimes we have two houses and we submit offers on both of them simultaneously. We try not to do that. I don't recommend doing that. But offers aren't binding, especially since we only write an offer as a proposal to purchase, which outlines our terms, and then we need your pre-approval. That's basically it. Let's jump to the home inspection for a second here. The home inspection is a very important part of the search. You are not an inspector, you're not an engineer, and we talked a little bit about this on the last video about the differences that we can select for the home inspection. So I'm not going to go through all the 5 different ideas of what you can do for the home inspection, how you negotiate that as part of the offer. I want to tell you a little bit more about how kind of the timeline of the home inspection goes when we actually have the inspection, and then how the negotiations and things go with the seller. So we have those 3 days of attorney review. And again, let's assume that we got our contracts back on a Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. Okay, so now we're there. So Wednesday would begin your home inspection period. And that's generally a 14 calendar day period where you have a licensed and insured home inspector, which I have multiple. I have one who I use regularly, but we do have multiple, that will come and do a full health report of the house. He's going to outline all the sections. He's going to send us the report within about 48 hours of completing the inspection. And then me and you, the buyer, will sit down on a call just like this. I'll probably be in this room actually, and we'll review the entire report together. We'll go from top to bottom, go through the entire thing. Sometimes it can take us 45 minutes to an hour, but it's important. It's a health report of your home, and it's a good detailed report. And so what we have to figure out from that report is, based on what we've pre-negotiated, whether we've done nothing, a threshold on repairs, safety, structural, environmental, inspections for informational purposes only, waive the home inspection, we have to figure out what are we able to ask for to be repaired that we want to have repaired. Now, again, a home inspection is going to be broken into 3 different parts. You have an improve or upgrade summary. Just little things like, hey, if you take a gutter extender, get the water a little bit away from the house, it's a small upgrade you can make that's going to improve the cornerstone and the structural nature of your home. That's an improve upgrade summary. That's just good stuff to know as a homeowner. We're not worried about that section. The second section is what's called a monitor or maintain section. This is little stuff like, hey, you should make sure that there's a little bit of corroding around pipes. There's nothing wrong with it right now, but just keep an eye on it, because if this starts to get a little bit worse, you could definitely develop some pinhole leaks that could develop into a bigger leak. So not an issue today, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Same thing with like, hey, here's where your air filter is. Make sure to replace this every 3 months for a good quality HVAC system. Simple stuff. And again, just good stuff for you to know as a homeowner. Not worried about that section either. The section we are worried about is the material defects section. And material defects are basically, they affect the safety of the home or the functionality of the home. Bad electric, that's a safety issue. Plumbing, that's a functionality issue. Windows don't stay open, that's a safety and functionality issue. So we're worried about that section. And so we look at that section and we say, hey, seller, there's 10 items here that need to be addressed in the section. Numbers 8, 9, and 10, I'm going to be ripping out that bathroom anyway. We're going to be replacing it. So 8, 9, and 10, like, we're going to take care of those anyway. So I'm not going to bother asking for them because we're going to fix those anyway. But items 1 through 7, we would really like to have fixed. And so you always craft what's called a buyer repair request list, where we send over to the listing agent and the seller the 7 items that we would like to have repaired from this section of the defects. And then the seller has a choice. They come back to us and say, okay, well, I see all 7 of these here. I'm going to do 1 through 6. I'll get those repaired, but I'm not going to do 7. Now, you would have the choice if you want to continue, if number 7 is a serious issue, you may decide why I don't want to move forward, and you have that right. Or you may say, you know what, 1 through 6 is good. With those 1 through 6, they have to do them most of the time by a licensed professional. Now, there are some items that a homeowner can do, right? If a railing is a little loose, you don't need a contractor to screw a couple better nails in and provide that it's not loose. But if you have electrical issues, I don't exactly want the homeowner doing that type of work. So you have to just be clear about which items do need to be completed by a licensed, qualified service professional, HVAC, plumbing, electric being some of the biggest ones of the issues that we see. Now, most of the time, though, there might only be like 9 more days left until settlement. And you've realized that some of these repairs, you're like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get a plumber out there in 2 weeks. People who I want to use are just not quite available, or I'm just not finding somebody to get in there right away. So a really common option during the home inspection period is, instead of having the seller fix that repair before closing, because remember, the seller is always going to fix it to the least quality that they can just to get through the transaction. They're not going to make it to the living standard that you would want it. So a lot of times I'll recommend to my clients, hey, would you be open to getting a credit in lieu of repairs? So the seller may say, hey, you know what? I'll do items 1 through 6. I'm willing to do 7, but we don't have time to get that done before closing, and we don't want to delay closing. So instead of doing number 7, we'll give you $500 so that you can complete that project when you move into the house. And that shows up as a form of a reduction of your closing costs. If you go back to a previous video in this buyer process series, you'll see I talk all about a seller concession, how we use it, how we navigate it, and kind of when it's appropriate. But that's a really common strategy. Instead of having the seller fix repairs, we get a credit for it. It's just less money we have to bring to closing, and therefore it's money that we have to spend on that repair. Okay, so that's going to sort of do it for us here on attorney review and the home inspection. There's a lot of little nuances with some of these things, but in broad strokes, these are the big kind of milestone decisions that you just need to be aware of. So the next time that we chat about some things, we're going to go on a little bit of a rant about some of the different things that are going on during the transaction that maybe we're not as privy to as a day-to-day, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what's happening with title. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening for mortgage. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening with your utilities and all of that stuff. So anyway, that's it for this one, and I'll see you on the next.